Our biblical texts say this. They say, "Lo, I tell you a mystery. In those days," they're talking about shift of the ages. "In those days we shall not all sleep. We shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye." Now what does that mean? What does that mean, that change? Without context, it doesn't make much sense at all. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, a fascinating body of information. It's not channeled. It was actually written and recorded approximately 13,000 years ago. It's actually pre-Egyptian texts. This book, the Emerald Tablets, became, and it remains today, essentially the Bible of the Freemasons, the Masonic traditions, the homeopathic sciences, as above, so below, and like treats like. Those all come from this text of Thoth, the Egyptian master in the Emerald Tablets. And look what Thoth says. He says that man is human, not making a distinction between male and female, but the form of man is in the process of changing to forms of light that are not of this world. Now we hear that all the time today from all the channel material and all the books and the workshops that are out there. 13,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, this is a pretty outrageous thing for anyone to say, that we were changing into forms of light. Now, two passages from the Book of Mormon. These are a couple of my favorites. It says that in those days, in the days of the shift of the ages, that ye shall never, that ye shall never endure the pains of death when I come in my glory, speaking of the universal reference beings, ye shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye from mortality to immortality. And it goes on to say that it is in our bodies that we will see our Creator, in our bodies that we'll see God. Now, this has absolutely nothing to do with religion, although it is taken from what may be considered religious texts. This is ancient information of a phase transition within the human body, information that was left to us that does not make a lot of sense in the past, without the context within which to frame this transition. The ancient Essenes, I identify very closely with the traditions of the Essenes. The Essenes were a sect of individuals who separated themselves from others of their time so that they could live their traditions and their belief systems in the way that they felt was appropriate. And in the Essene traditions, we're given a much different story in terms of our history, our purpose, our lives in this world, and this phase transition that Earth and our bodies are going through in this moment. We'll give that transition a name in just a few minutes. So through the Essene traditions, much of this information, many of these traditions are found in the scrolls that were found in the Qumran area around the Dead Sea. They became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're certainly not limited to the Dead Sea Scrolls. We see the Essene traditions throughout the Tibetan texts, throughout the Egyptian texts, in the Ethiopian traditions, in the Armenian traditions. They are scattered throughout our ancient texts if we have the wisdom to see them. And there is a universal thread that runs through those traditions. Okay? In the traditions of the Essenes, through the Dead Sea Scrolls, and many of the other texts, what we find is this. We find that all of the biblical books in the Old Testament are verified in those Dead Sea Scrolls, and more that we have not seen. And what it appears has happened, and what we know from our history, is that somewhere around the year 325 AD, somewhere right around in there, what we call our biblical text was revamped. Many books were deleted. Those that were left were compressed into a smaller form. Some of the books that were taken out of our text remain in the Dead Sea Scrolls, remain in the Nag Hammadi scrolls, the Nag Hammadi texts, also discovered in 1947, in the Tibetan texts. Look at what some of these books are all about. This is fascinating information. The Gospel of the Birth of Mary. This is a beautiful body of information that details the life of Mary. Mary's mother, for example, 81 years old when she gave birth to the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus. And Mary's mother had been barren for those 81 years, had never given birth to anyone else. Mary was 14 years old when she married her husband Joseph. All that information. The Essene mystery schools played a key role in these women's lives as they were Essene initiates. The books of visions of the prophets on the letters of Herod and Pilate. This is an especially interesting book. Between these two men, the letters were written immediately following the crucifixion of Christ. And the letters go something like this. Pilate wrote a letter to Herod, who was the king at that time, and said, I think we just made a mistake in this execution. And Herod wrote a letter back to Pilate and said, what do you mean we? Why do you say we made a mistake? You were the one that made that choice. And Pilate writes back and says, well, I didn't really want him killed. It was the people of the village, and it goes on from there. It gives us a very different view of the life of the Essenes, of the thought processes surrounding this execution. The secrets of the Book of Enoch. This is one of the reasons I put this in here. The Book of Enoch is a beautiful book of mysteries. The prophet Enoch, taken from his time ahead of our time to see what our world would be like, taken back to his time, recording that information and passing it down to us so that we would have a map of what this time in our history looks like. The Book of Enoch, portions of it are so detailed they actually become a little boring. As we go through this, as they give day-by-day accounts of the change of the cycles of the moon and change of the cycles of the sun and the magnetic fields, the earth tilting on its axis is actually what it says in this Book of Enoch. Those are books that we no longer have in our biblical text and that have a tremendous bearing on this time in history and this time in our lives. Well, through these Essene traditions, we are given insights into the life of a man, a reverence being, and I say that very intentionally, a man who came as a human to live among humans, to learn what humans had learned. A man we now know is Jesus of Nazareth. And as I'm saying this, what I'll say to you now on the camera, it may be no accident that this is being videoed on this day. This is Easter Sunday, 1996. And everyone here in the studio now is smiling because we're actually filming this on Easter Sunday. Maybe no accident that is happening. That this initiate, Jesus of Nazareth, lived the life that you and I have learned to live. He learned a trade. He lived. Archaeological records now are showing that the little village that he lived in wasn't so little at all. It was a booming metropolis of about 40,000 people. He learned of commerce. He had to do everything that you are learning to do in your life. He had to master the emotions of his life in order to proceed through the choices that he was making in his life. I particularly love this image of Jesus as an initiate, as a student learning. This is again from Cheryl Yonbrock Rose. The title of this image is Christ Anchoring the Celtic Ray in England. It's one of the sacred sites in England. So through the Essene traditions, what we are shown, what we are told is this, that at least once, one man, Jesus of Nazareth, remembered the true nature of his being, the nature of compassion, and we'll define that compassion genetically in just a few moments. He remembered that compassion, he became that compassion in his life, and in doing so, allowed a biochemical shift in his body, a genetic change, a reordering of genetic coding. You'll see all of this very, very clearly with schematics and drawings in just a few moments. And in that reordering, he allowed himself the opportunity to live a phase transition, to live a change of state. And today, we call that change of state resurrection. Now, resurrection has such a powerful connotation. Whenever we say the word resurrection, for so many people, it conjures up images of religious processes. Resurrection has nothing to do with religion, although religions were built surrounding the concepts of what this alchemy is all about. This is the union, the holy union, the marriage between spirit and the elements of this earth, as you saw in Alex Gray's body. So what we're experiencing is this. Our earth is going through a phase transition, low magnetics, higher frequencies. We live within the fields of those transitions. We live upon the earth. Every cell in our body is attempting to maintain a resonance, to stay tuned, to stay with those magnetics, to stay with those frequencies, allowing us to also transition with the earth into this higher expression, this higher form of energy.